start recording.
Yeah. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Why it is not screen is not moving. So you will send it up. Okay, I go for refuge. Sorry, again. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Thank you, Geshe La.
Thank you. So as you have already recited this verse, taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and cultivation of bodhicitta, so there you have this line saying that you are taking refuge and cultivating bodhicitta to benefit all sentient beings. So the purpose of today's meeting, in fact, the 4 Sundays starting from today, all these sessions and meetings are to benefit other sentient beings. Because there is nobody in this world who is not suffering, who is not having any problem. Our psychophysical aggregate itself is susceptible to sickness, aging, death, and so forth. In addition to that, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, we are creating so much man-made sufferings. Man-made sufferings are essentially unnecessary sufferings, but because of short-sightedness, ignorance, we are creating so much problem. So it is important to realize that the purpose of such teaching is not just to pass time. For me also, I'm not here to waste your time. The organizers also did not organize this just to waste time and to provide a forum for somebody to go somewhere. This is not the issue. I'm sure that you all came with good motivation, and it's important to have this good motivation and the thinking. Their life is not very long. Life is not very long. Nobody knows when we are going to die. That was actually the first teaching that the Buddha gave to provoke us into practice. Because normally we never think about dying, we always think about living. And it is because of this you end up accumulating wealth, you end up fighting for name and fame, and you get distracted to so many stupid things. If you develop this realization that life is short and nobody knows when to die, then, if you really develop that conviction, then that will give you a sense of what we should really be doing, meaning that what is really important. Of course, you have to do small things here and there for your food, for your clothing, and things like that, but that will not be just the end of the story. We will then start thinking about the real meaning of human life, the greater purposes of human life. So that is very, very important. If there is no understanding and thinking about the imminence of death and the essencelessness of this cycle of existence, you will never make a move. You will never make a move. And this master, Gampopa, he himself repeatedly says this. based on his own personal experience. Right from a young age, he learned all the subjects, including medicine, tantra, and so forth. And he married very young. And when he was just 25 years old, both of his children and his dear wife passed away. And thereby he was really able to see the essencelessness of this cycle of existence. Then he devoted all of his life for Dharma practice. So much so that later on he became the main disciple of Milarepa. And he was then become the man who established the Tagpo Kagyu tradition, which later on became the Kagyu tradition. So his life story clearly shows that if we make real effort, we can really make huge progress, great development. I, for one, I mentioned during the last meeting also, I, for one, looks like I have some karmic connection with Gampopa. Because when I was a student in the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, I was fond of reading books in general. Then I got this. I had no idea who Tapul Haji is at that time, but somehow I got this English translation, a yellowish book with a syllable R written on the cover, which was the Lamrim text composed by Gampopa. Then later on, when I was about to become the translator to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he invited me to come to Manali, where he was teaching this Lamrim by Gampopa. And again, I had the privilege of translating that teaching for His Holiness. And of course, got the privilege of reading this Lamrim at that time. Then later on, I had the privilege of receiving this particular text that we are going to read today. Lamcho Rinche Tingwa, the Supreme Path of Precious Garland. I received this short teaching, oral and explanatory translation from His Holiness many times. I was highly moved and started even memorizing some of the verses, some of which I've already forgotten, but I'm trying to read again. And as I mentioned last time, that although this is one text, one book, but it has so many different topics. And they are categorized in such a way that if you want to read just one section and leave it there, it really has almost all the practices that's needed for you to practice. So last time we read the first section. So today we are going to read the second section, 10 things that are necessary. 10 things that are necessary. 10 things that are necessary. The first is, it is necessary to have confidence and not make a mistake in our basic planning. So powerful. He says it is necessary to have confidence and strength and not make a mistake in basic planning. Now, here in this case, basic planning is not for money, not for construction, but for enlightenment, to benefit others. So therefore, he is saying that it is important to think properly. What is really good for this life? What is really good for many lives to come? Whichever is best, we should select it. Especially in our case, myself and all of you who are listening to this talk, We are not just small kids who has no power to think. And we are definitely above 15 or definitely above 20, most of them. So we can think. So therefore, it is important that you have this strength and confidence and make a planning so that there is no mistake in your fundamental planning. I sometimes use the word traveling through the national highway. You might get distracted here and there a little bit for lunch, for dinner when you travel on a national highway. But it is important to travel through that national highway to reach your destination. So likewise, as I mentioned, we need to do a little bit of work here and there for food, for clothing, this, that, a little bit of sleeping, all these things. But there should be a national highway kind of spiritual path towards which you should always come back. So in your thinking, there should be a dedicated path, spiritual path, like loving kindness, renunciation, bodhicitta, wisdom, understanding, emptiness. As simple as that. It's not very complicated. There are many ways of summarizing it, but if you summarize it like the development of bodhicitta and wisdom, that is it. That's it. It's not very complicated. But the problem is we are not able to remember these practices all the time, and we are not able to practice it all the time. So therefore, it is important. It is high time, especially for us, in human beings in general, and especially those of us who are already grown up and reached a certain level of age. And there, to be honestly speaking, there's not much time left, right? So therefore, you should make your own fundamental planning. Don't make a mistake in that. And don't just run after what people say. We are unfortunately guided by people to come into east, to the west, to the north, to the south, and we don't have that capacity to decide things for ourselves. So we should not really be like a small piece of cotton or feather on the top of a mountain, on the top of a windy mountain. Sometimes when other people are crying, we feel like crying. When other people are laughing, we feel like laughing. So if you do like that and just follow what other people are doing, then you will not be able to achieve success in anything. Forget about the path to enlightenment. Even in our ordinary activities, you are not going to achieve anything. Right? So therefore, you should make this a decision. If you are really, really interested in the spirituality, you should make this decision. I am going to choose this path. I'm going to practice it, whether people make fun of me, whether people appreciate me, whether I'm happy, whether I'm not happy, whatever may come. Right? I will do my practice. Just like the food that you eat all the time. Don't forget the practice. So in this, what is important is to use your human intelligence and your brain. And don't just keep on listening to others. You should have that courage. There's the meaning. You should have that confidence and courage not to just follow everybody, but to analyze, investigate, and then you should decide things for yourself and not make a mistake in your fundamental planning. And in one sense, today we are on the correct path because you have entered into this Dharma practice. So in a way, you have not made a mistake in choosing the fundamental, fact. And this is partly because of your effort, partly because of your past lives prayers, and also, as I mentioned, your correct way of thinking. So due to this coming together of many causes and conditions, you have got this amazing opportunity. Now don't fall out from this. Realize this. You have obtained this precious human life. You made the Dharma. You met good teachers, and you also have some kind of environment to do this practice. So realize this as something very, very special, not easy to get. We have over 8 billion human population, out of which those who are on this correct path is just countable, very small number. So therefore, don't postpone your practice thinking that I have time. Don't postpone your practice saying I have time. Death is definite. Time of death is indefinite. And at the time of death, the only thing that is useful for you is spiritual practice. Not your money, not your relatives, not your friends. And so therefore, in this case, the development of bodhicitta, for example, is one of the most important practice. Development of love and compassion is the most important practice. And Shantideva in his Bodhicharyavatara says that these practices like bodhicitta are important practice whose great benefit is investigated by intelligent Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for countless eons and found that this is really, really the most important practice. So how can you ignore this practice? How can you postpone this practice? So there's the meaning of the first line. Second line. Okay, I'm not reading the book probably that you have because I decided to do some of my own translation because here and there is a little bit differences of my thinking and the translation there. Second line says, it is necessary to practice in accordance with the words of the Sublime Lama with faith and effort. That means, having entered into this Dharma practice, you should do Dharma practice in accordance with the Dharma practice. For example, especially in the case of monk or even others, if you just consume the offerings that is made to you and do not do any practice in accordance with the Dharma, and in the case of monastics, if you live a life like the ordinary worldly beings, then this is a disgrace to the teaching of the Buddha and also disgrace to the individual monasteries. And for yourself also, this will produce only suffering, right? So therefore, whether you are monastic or whoever, once you've entered into the fold of this Dharma practice, then what kind of thinking you should have, what kind of way of life or conduct you should have. So in this case, he's saying the first and foremost important thing is you should have faith. Faith. Faith, there are many types of faith, but here I think since we are following the Mahayana teaching, faith of the intelligent people, not the faith of those whose mind is not so intelligent. Faith of the intelligent people means intelligent people should first examine the reliability of the teaching. And only when one knows that the teaching is reliable, then one follows that path and develops the faith, unflinching faith. That is important. Not blind, of course, not blind faith. The very reason Buddha emphasized so much about using logic and reason and using the brain, the very reason that the Buddha said that you should judge the teaching just like the goldsmith judging the gold. So meaning that you should use your brain, reason it out, and then develop conviction. And based on that conviction, you should practice it. So to start with, faith is very important. Faith is precursor to all kind of knowledges. Because when you develop faith, it removes the mental turbidity. It makes your mind clear. It's really like a hand that gathers everything, gathers all the virtuous practices. And without faith, It is not possible for any person to develop any virtuous qualities. Just like you cannot grow any plant from a burnt seed. So therefore, faith is like the mother that goes first in order to have the children. So faith is precursor to all Dharma practices. And whether you are really able to develop certain Dharma qualities in your mind is very much dependent upon whether you have faith or not. As I mentioned, faith is one that makes your mind, appreciate the good qualities, the virtuous qualities. It creates delight in your mind, right? So based on that faith, that should be the basis. Based on that faith, then the second thing that's important is you should be able to sustain your effort. Faith and effort. First, almost like motivation, faith is important. Then next is implementation through hard work, through effort. As you all know, effort is not just working hard. Effort means delighting in the practice. Delighting in the practice. For me, that is very important because if you don't delight in your spiritual practice, then you will not make a move. So there must be happiness that you are able to do this Dharma practice, right? Because it is through making the effort that you will be able to achieve Buddhahood. Okay? And Gampopa, in his own word, he says, as a facilitating factor for the path, spiritual path, you need faith and effort. And out of these two, the cause is faith. Because if you don't have the faith, you will not go into the fold of the Dharma practice. Then you will develop doubt towards the cause-effect relationship. And if you are devoid of effort, then you will keep on postponing your spiritual practice. That is what we do. We will be overpowered by laziness. And when we say laziness, laziness is of many types. One is like indolence, laziness, as we normally understand. Laziness means just sitting there, not doing anything. Second kind of laziness is laziness of postponement. You will say, okay, I'll do it next time. I'll do it on Sunday. I'll do it on the next, vacation. I'll do it when I am free from this work. I will do it. In the worst case is I'll do it after I finish watching the movie. Right? So the another kind of laziness is laziness of attachment to less important activities. This is what we normally do. We pay more attention to less important activities and not pay attention to what is really important. There are many reasons. One reason is when we talk about developing spiritual practices, this is something that you can't see directly. And we human beings have this tendency to neglect what we are not able to see, touch, and smell directly. We just run after, that's why we run after the five sensual objects and hardly do anything with your meditation or with your inner workings, right? So therefore, these two must be there as a precondition, faith and effort. Meaning that with faith and with effort, you should rely upon your sublime teacher, sublime Lama. Now, Lama means somebody who is superior. I am not a Lama. Okay, Lama means somebody who is superior. Superior in the sense that the real Lama, not everybody who has the title Lama is a Lama, to be honest. They may have the title. But the real Lama is one who cares more about others than for oneself. The real Lama is one who cares more about many future lives than just for this life. Now you can clearly see how many lamas are left now. Not many. There are many lamas sitting on high throne and things like that. But when it is scrutinized in this way, it's not easy to find really qualified lama. Okay? So if you don't rely on such qualified spiritual lama, and if you just try to do practice almost like groping into the darkness, then it's impossible to get liberated, to achieve liberation. So therefore you should rely upon a sublime lama or spiritual master. And unfortunately, in this time of degeneration, there are many who just have the name of lama, but in reality they act like a king. They act like a king, act like a leader. So it is of no use to rely upon such a lama. Contrarily, if you rely upon a sublime lama who practices in accordance with the monastic discipline and practices what he teaches, what he guides, then he will always, of course, tell you to live in accordance with the Dharma, and he will never ask you to do anything that is contrary to the Dharma teaching. And what is in accordance with the Dharma? The things that is in accordance with the Dharma means, as is said by Vasubandhu, that he will tell you to abide in morality, observe your moral ethics. He will tell you engage in studies. He will tell you to meditate. He will not tell you anything other than those teachings. That is the way of a qualified Lama. So by following such a teaching, if you systematically follow this path, then you are on the right track. So therefore it is important that you should first enter into the door of the Dharma. And after having entered into the door of the Dharma, do not just live a casual life, doing everything that your mind says do, because you have no idea how to really do a spiritual practice. Therefore, it is important to listen to the teaching of a qualified Lama. Therefore, and then when it comes to selecting the Lama, it is not, you cannot do it by just picking up anybody like shopping in the market. Even when you shop, you need to see whether the quality, that the article that you're buying is of good quality or not quality, whether it's outdated or date is expired or not. You examine these things. I remember the great teacher Sajapendita, who said even when you buy a cow, you will check very carefully, check the teeth of the cow and see whether the cow is really young, whether the cow is giving milk or whatever. So you need to, even when you buy horses or cows and other things, other articles in the market, you need to examine. If this is the case, then what need is there to talk about selecting a qualified teacher, qualified Lama, because he is supposed to be the one who will guide you to travel from this life to many lives to come, towards nirvana, towards enlightenment. So therefore, the third line says, it is necessary not to make a mistake in choosing a Lama by understanding their faults and qualities. Right? So therefore, you should not really rush like the dogs rushing. When one dog barks and runs into a particular direction, then every dog just runs in that direction. You should not do that in terms of searching the Lama. And do not just follow somebody because that person is very famous according to the worldly parlance. So then here you can read, probably I mentioned it right last time also. Therefore, in Buddhism, we talk about the four reliances. Four reliances. When you select a teaching, when you select a teacher you should follow the four reliances. Four reliances means when it comes to understanding the teaching, you should rely more on the meaning than on the beauty of the word. Right? You should rely more, pay more attention, rely more on the meaning than on the beauty of the word. Sorry, the first one is, I'm not forgetting. Old age is creeping. so, so the first thing is, yes, the first thing is when you're looking for the teacher, follow out of the four reliances. The first one is rely more on the teaching than on the teacher. That means you should see whether the teaching of that Lama is correct, beneficial or not, rather than whether that person is famous or not. Right? Unfortunately, these days, there are many ways of becoming famous. If you do more advertisement and distribute more money to your followers and things like that, then there will be many people following you, unfortunately. It's like everywhere. If you live in a fancy building and with a lot of attendants around, then many people start thinking he's a great Lama and everybody starts coming there making offering. He becomes even more rich. Then the Lama moves in, very fancy Mercedes cars and things like that. And ordinary people, they think, oh, he's so great, such a great Lama. But truly speaking, that's not the case. You should first listen to the teaching. If anybody is giving a Dharma teaching or talk, of course you can go if you like. But there is no need to see that person as your teacher, as your guru. Take time, listen to more of his teaching, and more importantly, judge his character, judge his behavior, whether he is practicing what is preaching or not. And then after repeated analysis, if you find that person is reliable, then probably you can follow. And then gradually, if you receive some tantric initiations, then of course you call that person as your teacher, otherwise not. So rely more on the teaching than on the teacher. Now, when it comes to the teaching, rely more on the meaning than on the beauty of the words. The word may be poetic and very beautiful, but if it is devoid of meaning, there in ancient times there is a treatise, there is a text which is said to be a text about how to analyze the teeth of a crow. How to analyze the teeth of a crow, the bird crow, whether the crow bird has teeth or not. Somebody has written a whole book on that in ancient times. So, right? So, so, so that text regarding how to analyze the teeth of a crow may be poetic and beautiful, but it is devoid of any meaning. Or there is another text somebody composed in long time back about how to get your mother as your bride. There are many wrong teachings. So don't follow such teaching, right? So don't just follow the beauty of the word, but the meaning. When it comes to understanding the meaning, follow the definitive teaching, then on the interpretative teaching. Because when Buddha gave the teaching, he cannot give everything that he knows. He cannot teach everything that he knows because there are so many people with so many mental capacities, so many mental dispositions. So therefore, he was compelled to give a teaching that is suitable to their mental level. So therefore, there are basically, two levels of teaching: interpretative teaching and ultimate teaching. Interpretative teaching is later to be interpreted because of certain situations and because of the listeners. Now, when it comes to understanding the ultimate or definitive teaching, rely more on the pristine consciousness, the wisdom mind, and not on the grosser consciousness. Because, ultimate teaching like emptiness cannot be understood by grosser consciousness. It must be realized by wisdom consciousness. That is the meaning. So there is 4 reliances, right? So therefore, so do not just run after the name and fame of a Lama. You should read the sutra, read the tantra, and keep these scriptures as your witness. And then you should analyze, as is explained in the sutras and tantras. The sutras and tantras talk about what are the qualifications of a Lama. So accordingly, you should analyze and investigate the Lama, his faults and his qualities. On an ordinary level, there is no Lama who has no fault, right? So the ordinary Lamas that we are meeting, in reality, who they are, we do not know. Not only the Lamas, in reality, you cannot judge anybody. You cannot say the ordinary looking person is not an enlightened being. You cannot say. But otherwise, in general, we can say there is no Buddha among the teachers whom we are able to contact these days, right? So therefore, you will find fault and also see good qualities, right? So it's important to find their qualities and also find their faults. And it is said that one who does not examine the Lama and accept that as one's Lama is like drinking poison. If you go after the wrong Lama, just as if you go after the wrong person, we get into big trouble. Similarly, if you go in the wrong hand of a Lama, it will be a big disaster. Similarly, the Lama should also examine the student. Otherwise, it will be like jumping from a cliff. So therefore, it should not be, when it comes to accepting somebody as your Lama, it should not be just like a dog rushing after a piece of meat thrown in front of the dog. So therefore, in order to practice in accordance with the teaching of the Lama, you should rely on a fully qualified teacher. Then practice what he teaches, not everybody. And the process of investigation is that you should also investigate and you should also ask other people. What do you know about this Geshe Lhakdor? Who is he? How good he is? Like that, you can ask, right? And not just one person, ask many people. And then also you can see whether the Lama is good or not. You can find that out by judging his students. If his students and followers are well behaved and relatively good, they cannot be perfect, but relatively good, then you can to some extent find out that the Lama is good, right? Because normally if Lama is somebody who practices in accordance with the teaching, then the student will also practice similarly. Contrarily, if the Lama does not practice in accordance with the teaching, but instead he is interested in worldly affairs, he is interested in politics, and then students will also be produced like that. So in the beginning, even if you're unable to do extensive investigation and also have no time, and somehow you meet somebody, a Lama, because of your past lives, karma and prayers, and then you ended up accepting as a teacher. Okay, that is also possible sometimes. But having relied upon this person as your teacher, and then under him, when you engage in listening, contemplation, and meditation, and then examine later on whether the Lama is living in accordance with the teaching or not. And by relying on that Lama, if it really helps in developing your study, your contemplation, your meditation, or not. As the Bodhisattva Tongwe Sangwa says in his 37 Bodhisattva practices, that by relying on somebody, if your faults decrease and if your positive qualities increase like waxing moon, then you have met a fully qualified spiritual teacher, and rely upon that person as more important than your own life. So even if you did not get enough time to examine, somehow because of karmic and other reasons, you have accepted somebody as your Lama, this does not mean that you cannot change. This point is very important because many sometimes due to lack of knowledge of the students, and also sometimes wrong teaching by the Lama, sometimes they cite a line from the Tantra saying that once you accepted somebody as Lama, and then if you do not follow him or her advice, you will go to Vajra hell. This, even though such lines are found, this line is within a particular context. And I myself had this experience. Somebody had a big problem with a particular Lama and came to me asking for my advice. I told her that in the beginning, the Lama was very useful, very beneficial to you. So for that part, say thank you, mentally at least. Now he is not doing a good thing. There's no way you can continue. So you can stop. Good thing is good thing, bad thing is bad thing. There's no need for you to tie your neck with that person forever. Just like marriage also. If the marriage doesn't go, then we say divorce. But still, even after divorce, it is good as a human being, remain in talking terms, right? And not maintain, hatred and things like that. So, contrarily, when you associate with somebody, Lama or friends, if your three poisons, attachment, ignorance, and hatred multiplies, and your three practices of listening, contemplation, and meditation declines, and gradually you are turned into a person with no love, no compassion, then you are clearly in association with a bad friend or a bad Lama or a bad teacher. So therefore, it is important to give up such a person. So having examined in this way, if you find the Lama has more quality than fault, then it's okay to rely on such a teacher. And the important thing is, whether it's you're making friendship with somebody or finding a teacher, if that person is, in terms of his or her conduct and behavior, is much inferior than you, then don't associate with such a person. Don't associate means don't make long-term friendship. Of course, you can help. You can still develop love and compassion, but don't accept that person as your, reliable friend or reliable teacher, because you will go downhill. If you relate to somebody who is of equal level to yourself, then there will be no, special development of your quality, because that other person has nothing special to offer to you. So therefore, it is important to rely on somebody, especially when you're talking about teacher. He should at least have few things more than what you have, meaning that he she should have more compassion. She should have more knowledge. Otherwise, she cannot be your teacher, cannot teach you. And then more importantly, the person should be ready to help you whenever you want to learn something from that person. That's very, very important. Okay. And the proper reliance on teacher is important, because these days what we find is that if that Lama, the so-called reincarnated Lama, happens to be from your region, from your province. Then you develop, I don't know what nationalism, or I don't know which one, what I should use. Then you develop this special, affinity, and because of that, even if that lama or reincarnated person is a horrible person, still you say he's a great person because he's from your province, from your locality. That is wrong. This is something I see many times here and there. Right? Uh, you're of course free to choose anybody, any lama as your lama. And especially in today's world, we are supposed to be having, freedom to choose anything. Which also means when you have the freedom to choose, you should know how to choose a lama properly. You have the freedom. It's not like living in a communist country, especially those of us who live in free country. We have the freedom to choose. So use that freedom to choose and choose a qualified lama. Because if you are not able to choose a qualified lama and rely on a wrong teacher, then this is really like inviting unnecessary suffering upon yourself. Unfortunately, there are not many who are able to select a qualified teacher. And then also, for some people, wherever they go, they meet good teacher, good lama. For some people, wherever they go, they meet wrong teacher. So this is also partly because of your past karma and partly because of your own way of thinking. Because you normally follow those whose way of thinking and whose actions are similar to yourself. So therefore, you need to be very, very alert and very, very careful and see whether you really want to go into the actual spiritual practice or just follow uh, uh, worldly way of doing things. Okay. So therefore, having relied upon a teacher, your job is to really understand the thinking of the teacher, to imbibe his positive qualities. We also see people who, having found a lama, they always end up doing things for the lama, which is sometimes good, but you are not his household attendant. Sometimes for very specially qualified lama, it is important, but for others, your main responsibility is to practice his teaching, not to just, do shopping and cooking. Okay? Because the point is, unless you try to get his knowledge, imbibe his qualities, it is not enough that you spend your time and life with that Lama, living together. Even at the time of the Buddha, there were many people, out of which there was one Devadatta, Devadatta, who associated with Buddha for a long time. Then this bhikshu called Likpa Karma, who said that I have spent 25 years with the Buddha, but did not see an iota of quality in the Buddha. 25 years lived with the Buddha, and he said, I did not find a single, speck of quality in the Buddha. So there's the case, because it depends how you see things. If you just keep on highlighting the fault, you will see the fault. And sometimes, even if that other person has no fault, you will see the fault. Right? So the most important thing is that you should imitate and imbibe the great many qualities of the teacher. So therefore, the next question is, okay, if that is the case, then what is the process that I should rely upon a qualified lama? Therefore, the fourth line says, it is necessary to fathom the thoughts of the Sublime Lama with wisdom and persistent faith. It is necessary to fathom. I don't know, I use this word, I don't know the correct term. Fathom means to find in the depth of the Lama's thinking. Or it is important to uh, uh, understand the thought of the Lama, thought of the Sublime Lama, with wisdom, with faith, and with effort. In the text, it says it is necessary for the thought of the Sublime Lama with wisdom and persistent faith. Persistent faith means faith, or persistent faith means faith should be persistent, meaning that it should be conjoined with effort, right? So therefore, it's only with wisdom, with faith. Faith also, I already mentioned, faith of intelligent person, and with persistence means effort, you should understand his thought. Meaning that if you are able to know how to select a qualified Lama, then when you rely upon such a teacher, the student should also have some wisdom, capacity to analyze. If you are devoid of wisdom and if you are ignorant, then even if the Lama gives teaching, you will not be able to understand it, and it will be of no benefit to you. If you have only wisdom and have no faith, again, it's of no use. You will not develop any appreciation to the teaching. And if you devoid of faith, if you have only wisdom, then you will become what we call as a dry logician. Dry logician means he will always try to find an answer, raise a question, but and through that the person will always end up seeking other people's faults and will never be able to develop any appreciation to the qualities of the Lama, right? So therefore, wisdom and faith must go together. And if it is only faith without wisdom, then you will become a stubborn fool, and there is then great risk of falling into the wrong path. So therefore, based on wisdom and faith, you should be persistent, meaning that you should make effort. Because if you don't have effort, but have only wisdom and faith, there will be not much speed in the development of your spiritual practice. So all these three must be together. Okay? And then a person with such faith, effort, and wisdom should try to get the experiences, the realizations, and all the qualities of the Lama completely, just like a pot of water poured into another pot. You should be able to imbibe and get all his qualities of experiences, of realizations. For example, qualities means qualities of the Lama's qualities of study, his contemplation, his meditation. And not only that, if the Lama is a very good calligrapher, you should also learn that. In other words, you should get all the qualities of the Lama. If you're able to do that, then you could also become like Vasubandhu. Vasubandhu's students. It is said that Vasubandhu has many students, out of which he had 4 students who are said to be more learned than Vasubandhu himself. It is possible. And similarly, if you read the stories of all the past masters, you will find that many of them are even better than the Lama. Fifth, it is necessary for the 3 doors to be untainted by faults and blemishes through mindfulness, conscientiousness, and heedfulness. This means whether you are able to understand the thought of the Lama or not is dependent upon yourself. If you are somebody who always keeps in mind the teaching of the Lama, and then accordingly, if you implement it, then you will be able to understand and fathom the thoughts of the Lama. On the other hand, if you act as if you are listening to the Lama's teaching, but retain nothing in your mind and do not practice anything, then it will be like a leaky pot. Whatever is put inside it, it'll go out from the bottom and will have no benefit. So therefore, not only rely upon a teacher, and you should try to remember this teaching with mindfulness, and then conscientiousness, through which you repeatedly analyze and investigate. And then finally, the heedfulness, where you're very careful about what to adopt and what to give up. So in this way, make sure that your body, speech, and mind are not tainted by faults. And with such practice, the Lama will also be pleased. And it's through this way of life that you will also be able to understand his thoughts. And therefore, even if you rely upon a teacher, and even if you have found a qualified teacher, but from your side, if you don't maintain mindfulness, don't maintain conscientiousness, and don't maintain heedfulness, then it will be like a person living near the ocean and die of thirst, not being able to drink water. Now, in order to make sure that your body, speech, and mind are not tainted, what kind of thinking and conduct you should have? This is explained in verse number 6. It is necessary to have a firm and sustainable commitment with armor and courage. With just like the armor that you use when you go to battlefield. So you should wear this armor and courage and make a very stable promise, sustained promise. We use the word as an example. For example, in the worldly life, when there is a conflict, war, then you put on the armor, especially in the old days. So similarly, when you engage into study and contemplation, so right in the beginning, you should make this promise that I will complete and I will perfect my practice. For example, if you are undergoing to do a practice of meditation, then you should make this promise that I will do this meditation for 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days, or whatever. So that kind of motivation is very important in the beginning, so that you are able to achieve success. Similarly, if you become a novice monk or full ordained monk or nun, you should make similar promise. And without making such a commitment, such a promise, if you simply imitate other people, if you simply join a monastery saying, my parents asked me to join, or my friends joined the monastery, so I'm also joining. My friend is meditating, therefore I will also join and meditate. Things like that. So it's almost like a competition, and it will not lead you to achieve success. So therefore, first you put on the armor of making this promise, making this commitment, and then it's not enough just to put on the armor, but in terms of your practice, in order to achieve success in your practice, you should have this mental courage, determination. Determination and courage means that you should not go back from your promise, right? For example, if you say, I'll do my practice when I'm Dharamsala, but not when I go back to America, then this is not a sustained practice. So wherever you go, whichever country you live, you should make this commitment to do the practice, because there is no place where you will go and where you will not die. There is no place where you will go and you will have no aging or no suffering, since there is no place where you will not develop afflictive emotions. And so long you develop these afflictive emotions, you are going to get a lot of problem. It's impossible for you to achieve liberation and enlightenment. So therefore, it is important to develop this courage to do sustained practice. And how much practice you are able to do is dependent upon how much courage you have, how much integrity you have. So therefore, through thinking, through contemplation, through investigation, we should develop very strong confidence. And don't think that I cannot do. Because if you think that I cannot do, you will never be able to get rid of the sufferings. As Shantideva says in his Bodhicharyavatara, if you remain discouraged and then give up your effort, you will never be liberated from the deprivation, whatever it is. On the other hand, if you develop confidence, courage, and make the effort, then you will become almost like invincible, meaning that none of the negative emotions and other negative forces will be able to stop you. So therefore, first you should put on the armor of making the motivation, promise. Secondly, in the middle, you should develop this courage so that you are able to pursue the practice, not just for a few years, not just for a few months, but until you achieve completion in this practice. So therefore, your commitment, your promise should be really like a mountain, unshakable mountain. So that kind of mental commitment must be there. On the one hand, you must have this commitment or promise. We are primarily talking about mental commitment. And then with courage, physically and verbally also, you should be able to continue with your practice. Because sometimes the body that does not listen to the mind, right? So therefore, physically, verbally, mentally, you should be dedicated to your spiritual practice. So if you are able to develop such a commitment, able to make such a promise, then you will become a really good Dharma practitioner before you die. Contrarily, if you make a promise of doing practice for a short time, it is okay, but it will not lead to great achievement in your spiritual practice. And if you really want to do a pure Dharma practice based on your own personal decision, without having to depend upon others, here it is important that you become free, more or less free from your dependence on others. If you really want to do this practice based on your commitment, then if you again remain dependent upon others, you will not be able to do your practice properly. So therefore, the next 7th line says, it is necessary it is necessary not to let the robe of the nose to others, meaning that it is necessary not to let yourself controlled by others. And you will be controlled by others. It is necessary not to let the others control you by leading a conduct without attachment and craving. Meaning that if you really want to get independent from dependence upon others, then you should not let others lead you by the nose like animals, meaning that you should not let others control you. And how can you do that? You can do that if you do not have attachment and if you do not have craving. If you lead a conduct which is free from attachment and from craving, if you have attachment and more importantly craving, then because of attachment for money, attachment for names and fames, you become slave to other people. You become completely dependent upon other people. And today what we are studying is studying the studying Gampopa's text, which is Gampopa is, as you know, is a lineage holder of Milarepa, and study the life history of Gampopa, study the life history of Milarepa. Milarepa, it's almost unbelievable. Said to have lived naked in Tibet's snow mountain. Difficult to believe for us. But if you read some of his teachings and his 100,000 songs, when later on, when he through his practice, he became very, very famous, and people, wanted to make him a lot of offering and requested him to come down to the, the town and stay. And some people even made fun of him. Like even his sister said, what kind of, practice is this? The other lamas, they come with a lot of followers, riding on, in those, in those days, horses, not just one, too many horses, like carcade, with banners, with canopies, looking very magnificent. The sister said, now look at you. You have just become a shameless beggar, not even having cloth on your body. What kind of practice is this? So to this, Milarepa said, if I wanted to do a false Dharma practice, I can do much better than them. If I am to do a, pretended false Dharma practice, I can do much better than them. But I'm doing real Dharma practice. Therefore, I've given up everything. And actually, in terms of spiritual practice, the more you give up, the more you get, actually. You don't lose anything. You lose some material things, but in reality, you get. But because we are not able to give up the material belongings, material possessions, we are not able to get spiritual possessions. Right? So therefore, it is important. We may not be able to, do exactly like Milarepa, but we should, at least, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama skillfully says, 50-50, meaning 50% for this life, 50% for future, or 50% for yourself, 50% for others, at least to start with. Then gradually we can probably become better. Because if you rely too much upon others, then human beings are human beings. It is not sure what they are going to say. Some will say good, some will say bad, You have no idea what they are going to do, what they are going to say. So if you just follow what other people are saying, you can't even walk for a short distance. Some people say go there, some will say don't go there, so what should you do? So you need to decide. So in this case, in terms of this spiritual practice, not only you make decision, but you should make such a strong decision like a mountain. And the beauty of this is, if you take that dedicated line and make a firm decision and engage in your spiritual practice properly, later on everybody will live in harmony with you. They will come to consult you. You don't have to go to others and consult. This is what Buddha did. He left his kingdom, his beautiful son and wife, father, mother, everybody. It looks like it's awkward, but later on, everybody, even today, millions of people get his inspiration, right? So therefore, he clearly shows dedication, not only in spiritual practice, but whatever you do, you should do it properly. And he gives an example by saying, look at the children's playing. If there is one child who does not join the other group of children and stays in his own place and does something by himself or herself, then later on other children will also surround that child. and he will become the leader. He will become the leader. So we should be like that. And if you keep on, living in a good, adapting to other people's need and consulting them, then it is impossible. It is impossible to achieve genuine spiritual dharma practice. As is said by Shantideva in his Bodhicharyavatara, if you associate with children, then what will you get from the children? Children means here, all of us. If you associate with the children, what will you get from the children? From the children, you will get how to praise yourself, how to defame others, how to say mundane things, and therefore you will end up developing the negative emotions. So therefore, by relying on such childish, worldly beings, it will only lead you to destruction, because they will not be able to do anything for your purpose, and you will not be able to do anything for their purposes. So it is better that you stay far away from those. Right? So you see here, you need degree of commitment, right? So there's the meaning of not letting yourself led by others, led you by your nose. And the reason that they are not able to stand firm in their own place is because of attachment and craving. For example, if you have a lot of attachment to, external material wealth, then in order to get that, you are compelled to follow in line with others. And if you're attached to your own body, or you have this craving to your own body, then in order to serve and look after your body, again you will be compelled to consult others. Contrarily, if you have not much attachment to wealth and have less desire and have contentment, then there's no reason that you need to follow other people's lines. And this all of us know. All of us know. And I've seen this many times, that if you have, if you're not expecting anything from others, then you can easily say yes, no, whatever you want to say. There's no problem. There's no problem. And this I've experienced in my life many times. And because of having, because of not having such expectation, at least in my own case, I can say I have a very free life. Very free level. It happened many times that there is a lure of money. You do this, you will get this much money. You do this, you will get this money. I said, sorry, I'm not able to do this, which means I'm free. I did not get that money. It's okay. I don't need that. Okay. I also got opportunity of getting high post. I said, no, I'm free. So, I mean, by this, I'm not saying I'm a great practitioner, but even by using my common sense, I was able to get more freedom than just running after this posts and money and things like that. Right? So, when you don't have this attachment craving, and if you're contented with meager food and livelihood, which is enough for you to live, and you don't need many ornaments to put on your body, and you don't need money, you don't need really very fancy, elaborated, house to stay, and then there is no reason that you need to follow other people's dictates. And even on those occasions, when you are acting as if you are benefiting others, like, for example, this particular teaching that I'm giving today, even this one, if it is becoming an obstruction to real Dharma practice, then you should stop it and say that I'm not able to do this. For example, just today I got an invitation to come somewhere, which I didn't really see much purpose there, and wasting 5-6 days. I immediately said, no, I'm not able to come. All right. So the point is that you should be able to use your brain and decide what is really good for you and good for others. If it's really benefiting many people, then you should do it, of course. So therefore, it is important that you should not have attachment to external material wealth, and also no craving to your internal physical body. And in this way, do not let yourself led by the nose by others. Okay. Or maybe stop here, maybe at least one or two questions. The time is going so quickly.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Geshe-la.
2, 3 questions. Yeah.
They have one question someone sent in the chat, and it
Okay.
says, "Hi, Geshe-la, how to practice if we don't have access to a good lama?"
We are today living in the age of technology. So you can attend, at least to start with, attend some of the online teachings. There's so many online teachings. Attend to some of these online teachings. And many of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachings are also available online. Listen to some of them. Right? That's important. But the most important thing is, until you get the teacher, make sure that your life's main purpose is to benefit others and not to harm others. As simple as that. Okay?
Thank you, Geshe-la. Anastasia, would you like to ask your questions from the Russian students?
Right now, there is no question yet.
Good.
Okay. If there are any questions in English, please raise your virtual hand because I can't see everyone and I can unmute you, or please put your question in the chat.
No question?
I don't see any, Geshe-la. Anastasia,
Very
did
good.
anybody write to you? No. So maybe Geshe-la, we have a question.
Okay.
Um,
Namaste, Geshe-la. My name is
Namaste.
Carl, and I'm with Venerable Bodhisaro. My question
Okay.
is, in the same way that we take deity empowerments, or we get empowerment, take wangs or whatever, is there a similar thing for bodhicitta? And if not, how can we empower our bodhicitta very strongly so that it's always at the forefront without it ever falling out of awareness? Thank you.
Bodhicitta. It's a question of doing repeatedly. Both in the case of the aspirational bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta, as the word itself clearly says. Aspirational bodhicitta, meaning that you should every day develop this aspiration. May I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Do this as many times as possible in a day. That is aspirational. It's very important. But if you have received Bodhisattva vow, then what is even more important than the aspirational bodhicitta is the engaging bodhicitta, which means having taken the Bodhisattva vow, we should then engage in the 6 or 10 practice of the 6 and 10 perfections. Right? So it is not just now aspiring, but actually implementing and doing. Okay? Okay, no question. Then maybe I read the next one.
I'm just seeing what someone put in the. Someone is just thanking you for your teachings in the chat, Geshe-la. I don't see Any questions? And if Anastasia, you have, oh, here's a question. Geshe-la, the question is, please, Geshe-la, can you give another example of the rope of your nose slipping into the hands of others?
So that means just like this is an example that is used in many cultures and traditions. That you put a hook in the nose of the animal, then put a cord or a rope there, and then the animal is led into whatever direction the owner wants to lead. So that means you are controlled by the owner. So now here it says not let your nose led by others, means that you will be led by your nose by others, means that you will be controlled by others. If you have attachment, if you have craving to your body, attachment to the wealth, then you will always become dependent, because you can't get everything just by yourself, right? For example, just to give you example, for example, if you work in a particular company for your salary and things like that, and more or less you're controlled by that owner of the company. And you have to make very sure that you are not fired from that company, right? So if you are somebody who doesn't bother about the wealth and the name and fame, something like that, then if the owner says, okay, I'll fire you, you say, okay, no problem, thank you, now I'm going to do my meditation. Whatever, something like that, you see, something like that. Yeah. Yes, practically speaking, we need to do work. We are in a difficult situation. Things are not that easy, as I'm saying. But the less, in other words, if I qualify this statement, the less attachment you have, the less craving you have, the more free you will be. That's the point. And if you have no attachment at all, no craving at all, then you're completely independent.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Anastasia has 2 Russian questions.
What can
Yes.
one do about one's...
Yes, there is a question. How to do what to do if there is no opportunity to practice with the root guru? If somebody considers the root guru His Holiness Karmapa or His Holiness Dalai Lama.
No, as I mentioned, root guru is important when but but if you use your common sense, generally speaking, to become a good human being, you don't need a guru. I'm not talking about the Buddhist spiritual practice, but in general, to become a good person, you may need some teacher, some guidance, but you don't have to have one called root guru, right? Because just by using your human brain and intelligence, you should have some sense of what is good for you and others, what is not good for you and others. If you just leave that, if you just practice that, not doing any harm to others, doing, every possible, help to others, you're already on a very good spiritual path, right? So therefore, in one of the Buddhist teachings says, if you properly live this secular human way of life, then doing the spiritual practice will not be difficult at all. So start from there first. Don't worry about root guru and all those things. First, you should see whether you are doing those things which you should think you should be doing, and giving up those things which you thought you should not be doing. Are you doing those things? That's important, because I say this not particularly in your case, the questioner, but generally what I find is people are very fond of trying to overreach things. They don't do small things that they can easily do, and then talk about big things, initiation, empowerment, root guru, completion stage, generation stage. I think that is a little bit fooling oneself, because you will recall, when Buddha was asked about the 14 unanswered questions, Buddha said, I have only given teaching on those areas where I can decide things, and not about those things which I cannot decide. And he said, those things that I can decide is that we can all see there is a lot of suffering here. That's what we can see. That's what we can decide. So I'm interested in giving those teachings and those guidances which will help remove and alleviate the sufferings of sentient beings. I'm not so much interested in asking metaphysical questions. When did the world came into being, whether there is end, things like that. He did not answer those things, right? All right.
Thank you, Geshe. And one more question. If the person studies Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim, should this person search for the teacher who is in his time, or should he consider Lama Tsongkhapa as his teacher?
This time, Tsongkhapa is not here now. But we have many teachers like His Holiness, and many others who follow the Tsongkhapa's teaching and who, who live in accordance with the teaching of Tsongkhapa. So there are many teachers. So they are like Tsongkhapa's representative. And if you are able to understand, then read Lamrim Chenmo itself. This is what Tsongkhapa himself taught. And other teachers will help you understand those teachings. Whether it's the great stages of the path, or whether it's the middling stages of the path, or whether it's the song of experience, or whether it's the foundation of all qualities, all this Lamrim texts that Tsongkhapa composed are there today, luckily for us to see. And so start reading those, and then in order to understand the teaching, seek the help of somebody who has more knowledge. So this is really like meeting Tsongkhapa himself. For example, this particular text that we are reading today, the writer, in the very end of the text, he says, in the very end of the text, he says, in the future, there will be people who have faith in me and who might think that I'm so sorry, that I'm so sad that I could not live at his time and could not meet him. So if there are anybody who thinks like that, then this text, the Sublime Path of Precious Garland, and the jewel ornament of liberation, the Lamrim that I have composed, if you please read this, and please study this, and by doing so, it is equal to your having met me. Because even if you meet him, there's nothing he can say more than what he has taught already. So we can, apply the same thing with Tsongkhapa and with Buddha, and so forth and so forth and so on. Right?
Geshe, one last question is okay?
Yeah.
Someone says, how does one determine if one is ready to take the Bodhisattva vows?
Bodhisattva vows, first you develop the aspiration. First try to develop a little bit of compassion and loving kindness. Compassion means thinking how nice if all sentient beings are without suffering. Loving kindness means thinking how nice if all sentient beings meet with happiness. You may not be able to develop genuine loving kindness and genuine compassion, but at least you should develop some kind of sense of concern and sense of responsibility when others suffer. Some sense of responsibility of doing good things for others, love and compassion. And then gradually you should think that the best way to solve the problem is that I should myself become Buddha to benefit everybody. Because until I become Buddha, I will try my best to help them. But since I do not know how to read their mind, what is their past lives, karmic imprint, I will not be able to do justice to everything that they need. So therefore, the best way of helping them is that I myself become Buddha. And in this way, you develop bodhicitta. How nice if I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So stage by stage. And then gradually, gradually when your development of the aspirational bodhicitta is stronger, and then you make a commitment saying that I will practice. I will practice. I will not only aspire, but I will practice the bodhisattva way of life. And at that time, you take a bodhisattva vow. So you should not just wait for a time. You should take it. So long as you want to have this wish to do good things for others, you should take it. We may not be able to practice everything, but at least it's a great opportunity to make this commitment and try to do the practice rather than waiting and saying, at what time, at what age. I think that time and age will never come. Right? So I think in terms of doing good things, you should be a little bit bold. You might slip here and there a little bit, but it's okay. It's okay. Be bold, as we already read. Have confidence, be bold. When it comes to doing bad things, you should not be bold. But we do the opposite. When it comes to killing other people, armies are there, militaries are there, smart uniforms are there. People are ready to sacrifice their life, which you can see everywhere in the world today. but for doing good things, hardly anybody coming forth. So there's the problem. So take it as soon as possible. Well, that's my thinking.
Thank you
All
so
right, so we stop here today.
Thank you. Sorry, we ran over a little bit.
No.
Geshe, maybe you just want to say some dedication prayer.
Yeah. Chancho semjo rinpoche ma je bonam che jo je jeba nyamba meba yang kongye kongwe pewa sho. So I said, may the precious bodhicitta, which I have not developed, should be developed, and which I have developed, be further enhanced.
Thank you
Oh,
very
yeah,
much, Geshe La.
thank
And
you,
I've allowed everyone to unmute themselves now. So if you would like to unmute and express your wishes to Geshe La, you can.
Thank you, Geshe La.
Thank you,
Thank
Geshe La.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe La.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Большое спасибо.
Спасибо.
You should all come out through
Thank
the
you, Geshe La.
television. Come to my room.
Спасибо.
Okay.
We wish you could
Bye-bye.
see you all next week. Thank you so much, Geshe La. Good
See you
night.
next Sunday. Yeah. Thank you.
Night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.